Good day, everyone. Yeah, good day, everyone, and thank you for joining. We are holding the Nordea Project Management Competence Network meeting, and I'm really happy to introduce our speaker, Dr. David Hillson, known globally as the Risk Doctor. He is an award-winning thought leader and expert practitioner who consults and writes widely on risk management with 10 major books on the topic. David leads the Risk Doctor Partnership, a global consultancy offering specialist risk services across the world. His work in risk management has been recognized with many professional awards, including being named as Risk Personality of the Year by the Institute of Risk Management in 2010. In recent years, David has specialized in strategic risk management with a focus on risk culture, risk appetite, and risk attitudes. So I don't want to steal your time anymore, and let's see what David has to say about managing risk in innovation projects. So please, David.
Okay, thank you very much, and I hope everybody can hear me clearly. I'm calling from my home office in the UK, and very pleased to be able to connect with you in this remote way. So I hope everybody can see the slides and hear me clearly, and we'll make a start. I'm going to have the facility to take questions at the end, and the questions that you have at the beginning of the presentation will be answered towards the end of the presentation. So hopefully that will make things easier for you. I might just say I can hear some background noise, so if it's possible for you to mute your microphone, then that will make it a little cleaner. We are recording this session for the people who can't join us today. So thank you for that. Let's make a start. We're going to talk about how to manage risk in innovation projects. And I've been interested in risk management for, I should think it's 30 years now. I started in 1984 when I was very young, and there have been a lot of innovations along the way. And I want to share with you some of the insights in how we can apply a risk-based approach to dealing with projects which are innovative. So we should start by asking what we mean by innovation. Here are some quotes from famous people. Peter Drucker: "Innovation is the instrument of entrepreneurs." That's how we make changes, how we develop business, how we develop new products. Ted Levitt, an American marketing guru: "Innovation is thinking up new things, but innovation is doing them." And then the quote, which nobody knows where it came from: "Innovation is what happens when everything else fails." To be innovative, we need at least three things. We need to have a good idea, and it needs to be creative, and it needs to meet a need. And without all three of these things, we can't have true innovation. So we might have a great idea that meets a need, but if they don't have the creativity to make it work, we can't be innovative. Or you might be a very creative person, and there's a need clearly in the marketplace for something new, but if you don't have any ideas, we can't be innovative. Or you might have a great idea and be very creative, but nobody needs what you're producing. So we need to bring these three things together: some new ideas, the ability to make them happen, and meeting a need. We might say that innovation is about doing things that are new or doing the same things in a better way, but it also needs to be done in a way that is useful to people, and I guess it needs to be profitable, unless you're somebody very, very rich who can be just innovative and give things away. And most of us are not like that. So that's what innovation is. If we're going to talk about how to manage risk in innovation, we also need to know what risk is. So let me just give you a very quick reminder of the basic principles of risk and risk management. Risk is not the same as uncertainty. All risks are uncertain, but not all uncertainties are risks. There are millions, maybe billions of uncertainties in the world, but we filter those to a smaller number to decide which ones we're going to treat as risks. So how do we decide which of the billions of uncertainties we will count as risks that we need to identify, understand, respond to, report on, manage? There's a very simple way to filter which uncertainties are going to be treated as risks. Risks are uncertainties that matter, because most of the uncertainties in the world don't matter. And how do we decide what matters? The things that matter are the ones that could affect our objectives. So if we want to define risk, we have to think about two dimensions: an uncertainty dimension, how uncertain is the risk, and how much it matters, how much it might affect our objectives. And we tend to use the word probability to describe the uncertainty dimension. We could use other words like frequency or chance or likelihood. And we use the word impact to describe the effect on objectives dimension. And again, we could use other words like consequence, result, or effect. But probability and impact are the words we tend to use in projects. Now, here's a silly picture I found on the internet to illustrate impact, but it also has other major points to make, an important point about the nature of risk, which is particularly important thinking about risk in innovation. The mouse here is facing an uncertain situation, and he needs to do some risk management. And you can see that the mouse is aware that there is a trap, and there's a risk that he could be killed or injured if he springs the trap. And so he's very, very careful. He's put his helmet on. He's going very, very slowly to make sure that he doesn't spring the trap, he doesn't get killed or injured. And it's important for us in our projects to make sure that we identify potential bad things and stop them happening. So we need to prepare and to protect ourselves and to go. But there is another uncertainty that matters to the mouse in this situation. It's not just the trap could spring and he could be injured. It's that there is cheese on the trap and he wants to get the cheese out. And there's no guarantee that he can do that. It's uncertain, but it's an uncertainty that matters. And what the mouse has to do in this situation is to manage two types of uncertainty. He has to stop the bad thing happening and make the good thing happen at the same time. And we have to do that in our projects, and particularly in innovation projects, where there's a lot of cheese. Well, what does cheese mean in terms of projects? Cheese means value. Cheese means benefits. Cheese means products and services that people want and need. And there's no guarantee that we can get that value and benefits of our projects. Projects are innovative and difficult and complex, and they need to be managed carefully. So like the mouse, we have to stop bad things happening in our projects, but we also have to make good things happen in our projects, and we have to do both at the same time. And what we're looking for in innovation and in risk management is to find the best possible way of getting the most cheese whilst not springing the traps. In our projects, the traps are things that waste time, that waste money, that damage reputation, that destroy value. We want to stop things happening. And the cheese are the things that produce benefits, that produce value, that give us an innovative product that people will use. And we have to do both of those things together. So that's the current sort of modern understanding of risk. If we're thinking about impacts, there are two types of impact that matter. There are positive impacts as well as negative impacts. There are uncertainties that can help us as well as uncertainties that harm us. An uncertainty that could help us, we call that an opportunity. It may never happen, it's uncertain, but if it does happen, we're pleased about it because it saves time, saves money, produces a better product. And an uncertainty might happen that would hurt us, we could call that a threat. A threat may never happen, it's uncertain. If it does happen, we wish it hadn't because it wastes time, wastes money, destroys value. Both opportunities and threats are both different types of risk. Risk is a double-sided concept which has an upside and a downside. It has positive and negative. And both of these things need to be managed proactively, particularly in innovation projects. So when we come to our definition of risk, we have to connect uncertainty with objectives. Here's an example definition from the Project Management Institute. It is an uncertain event or condition that if it occurs, it matters because it has an effect. But it's not just any effect. we're interested in two types of effects. We're interested in traps and cheese. And in the PMI definition of risk, which you can find in the PMBOK guide, the Project Management Body of Knowledge Guide, Chapter 11, there are 3 extra words. The words reflect both cheese and traps. And they're these words. A risk is an uncertain event or condition that, if it occurs, has a positive or negative effect on an objective. So in this definition of risk from PMI, we embody both upside risks, downside risks. We embody both opportunities and threats. And it's not just PMI that takes this perspective. You will find the same in the ISO standard for risk, ISO 31000, and in other international standards as well. And this double-sided nature of risk becomes very important when we start thinking about how to manage risk in innovation projects, as we'll see. So why is risk management relevant to innovation? Because innovation involves both opportunities and threats. In innovation, we have opportunities to do something new, to do something different, to do something better, to do something useful, and to do something profitable. But along with those opportunities to create value, we also have the possibility of wasting our time, wasting our money, producing nothing. And in innovation projects, we need to map the upside and the downside so that we maximize our opportunities and minimize our threats at the same time. So risk management offers us a really useful approach to thinking about innovation because it addresses both opportunities and threats in a single process. Innovation is an interesting blend of success and failure. If you've ever been involved in an innovation project, you'll know that failure happens along the way as we're trying to succeed. And there are many examples of innovation projects which have expressed or experienced both success and failure. Just to give 3 simple examples, one of the places I know very well is Heathrow Airport in London, Terminal 5, a beautiful terminal which failed really badly on its day of opening when the baggage system failed, collapsed, and people were unable to check their bags in and then to collect their bags afterwards. It was a really, really bad thing. But now Heathrow Terminal 5 is a great success story, and millions of passengers travel through it, including myself, very, very happily. So was it a success or was it a failure? It was very innovative in its design, but it was both failure and success. You might know about the sticky notes that 3M invented, called Post-it notes. They were invented because there was a sticky adhesive invented which wasn't very good. It kept peeling off. It was a failure, but sometimes there was an opportunity to do something different, and innovation was created through turning that failure into success. One more example that you might be familiar with is this drug, produced by Pfizer, originally intended to treat heart condition, but it had another side effect. It failed as a heart treatment, but was very successful in another field. Well, let's not talk about that very much, but let's go back to the general idea of innovation, success, and failure. And I'd like to introduce to you an idea called the innovation ecocycle. An ecocycle, the idea comes from nature. When we see it in natural systems like a forest or like a river, you'll see that there's a period of growth and then a period of decay, and then another period of growth, period of it in the sea. And an ecocycle has been transferred, the idea has been borrowed from the environment or from nature into the world of management to recognize that we have cycles where things go well, and then cycles where things do go not so well, and then it repeats again. And in innovation, we have a similar kind of cycle between success and failure. We might call the two halves an innovation zone and a development zone. In the innovation zone, well, what do? We innovate, obviously. And having made an innovation, we consolidate that together to create value, to create products, and explore that innovation as far as we possibly can to create as much value as possible. But what happens when you're exploring in the innovation zone is you inevitably reach a boundary, you reach a barrier, you reach a place where we can't succeed, we can't innovate any further, and we fail. Something goes wrong with our innovation because we're pushing too far, we're pushing beyond the boundary. And so our success always ends in failure because there's a limit to how far we can innovate. So what do we do when we fail in innovation? When we're trying to do something really new, really better, really unusual, we succeed and then we find a place where we can't go any further. Do we give up? Do we say, that's it, you failed, the project is over? Well, there's an alternative. The idea of the ecocycle is that there are repeated cycles of growth and then development, growth and decay. In the decay cycle, we don't just want to give up. What we want to do is to reflect. What happened? Why have we turned from success to failure? What boundary have we crossed? What is different in this part of our project from when we were being truly innovative? When we reflect, we'll find things we can learn, and we can continue and push through those boundaries and those barriers until we find new ways to succeed in our project. And the idea of an innovation ecocycle is that we use the innovation zone to maximize our opportunities. And when we're in that development zone, we minimize our threats and learn from our failures. And of course, as it's a cycle, then it repeats. So we have in our innovation projects periods where we're developing new ideas and we're innovating and consolidating and exploring. Then things go wrong, we've hit a barrier, we don't give up, we reflect and learn, persist in our project until we break through into a zone. Now this diagram, which I hope is going round and round on your screen, suggests that there's a loop, but it might also suggest that we're going round and round in circles and not going anywhere. So perhaps there's a better way of representing the ecocycle for innovation. Maybe it should look like this, where we have an innovation loop, and then we have a development loop. So in our first innovation, we made progress, but then we hit a barrier, and so we need to reflect and learn. And we persist until we break through into new success. We make more innovation and more development, and then we've hit another barrier, and then we need to learn, and then we develop some more, and then we learn. And so you have this progress, this wave of success and failure going through our innovative projects. What we're wanting to do is to alternate between innovation and development, but to make sure that we maximize our time in the innovation loop and minimize our time in the development loop, so that we're spending more time creating value, less time working out what went wrong. What we're trying to do is to maximize our opportunities and minimize our threats. Can we think of any process that would help us to maximize opportunities and minimize threats? Of course we can. The answer is risk management, because that is the absolute purpose of risk management, to maximize the probability and impact of positive events and minimize the probability and impact of adverse events. So we have in risk management a single integrated process that should help us to address both threats and opportunities. That's the purpose of risk management. And if we look at a standard generic risk management process, it works equally well for threats or opportunities. So we might find that once we've established the context for our risk process, we have clear objectives, we understand our risk thresholds, we can identify risks. We could identify bad things. We could identify potential good things. Not all of those things will be equally important, so we need some kind of assessment step, which could be qualitative or quantitative, to decide which are the biggest threats and the biggest opportunities. And then we can decide, once we know which are the important ones, what shall we do about it in a risk response planning phase. Then we implement our responses and review the situation. So standard risk management process works equally well for both threats and opportunities, which means that we can use it in innovation. We can use it to extend our standard process by minimizing the overhead of developing a new process, to be more cost effective, to be more innovative, to motivate the team more, to capture opportunities and turn them into benefits and to improve our chances of success. So including opportunity in the risk management process has lots of value. It's really an important step. So let's see how we can use that in innovation. And given the time limit that we have, I want to focus just on 3 areas of the risk process. The first is using the identification step to find opportunities for innovation. The second is to use the qualitative risk assessment step to decide which of our innovation opportunities are worth pursuing, and is to use our response planning step to decide, how we're going to respond to those innovation opportunities that we've chosen. Okay, so let's look at these 3 different areas. First of all, how do we find opportunity innovation? Remember, an opportunity is a type of risk. It's a positive risk. It's uncertain, and it matters. It's an uncertainty that can affect achievement of our objectives, but it's an uncertainty that can affect them positively. We're not talking about the benefit, that's the result of our innovation. We're not talking about the response, which is our opportunity to the way that we act or behave. And we're not talking about scope creep, which is an opportunity to do something else. We're talking about uncertainties that may never happen, but if they do happen, they help us to be more innovative. We might call those things, let's have other names like nice surprises, or good luck, or things that we might dream about on a good day. How do we find those things? Well, we could use the standard risk identification techniques like brainstorming, checklists, questionnaires, and so on. The problem with these techniques is that they limit our thinking. They limit them very often to bad things. We need to, as people say, think outside the box, to be creative in our thinking if we want to find innovation opportunities. And the problem with thinking outside the box is that very often it gets a little bit messy and is not as tidy as thinking inside the box. And sometimes management don't really want us to think outside the box. Well, that's a joke. But there are problems with our standard risk identification techniques because they tend to be focused on finding bad things. And that's what we're used to doing. Our habit to look for bad things. We forget we should be looking for good things as well. Maybe we should just try very, very hard to change our practice or to change our procedures. But maybe there are better techniques we can use to identify threats and opportunities together. What kind of techniques can we think of that would find threats and opportunities? Let me suggest 2 that we could consider. One is obvious, SWOT analysis. Why is it obvious? Because O stands for opportunity and T stands for threat. So clearly this technique is something to do with those 2 types of uncertainties that matter. Another technique we might consider is the development of the fault tree analysis, which is called a benefits tree analysis. And I'll explain how that works in just a moment. So let's look first at SWOT analysis. In SWOT analysis, we have 4 perspectives. Strengths and weaknesses describe characteristics of our organization which we're good at or bad at, which will help us to achieve our goals or hinder us from achieving our goals. And opportunities and threats, as we've seen, are 2 types of risk. Opportunities are positive risks and threats are negative risks. Opportunities could help us achieve our objectives. Threats could stop us affecting our objectives. Now, SWOT analysis, a lot of people think they do SWOT analysis, but actually they just identify these 4 perspectives and don't do very much analysis at all. Let me suggest to you how we can do SWOT analysis. You need to recognize that strengths and weaknesses are different from opportunities and threats. Strengths and weaknesses describe who we are. They describe facts about the organization. Opportunities and threats are about what we're doing, the objectives that we're trying to achieve in our innovation projects. And to undertake SWOT analysis, we need to recognize that who we are affects what we do. The facts about the organization will influence the uncertainties about our objectives in 2 particular ways. the strengths that we have, the things that we're good at, can create opportunities for us to be more innovative by building on our strengths. And the weaknesses that we have as an organization can make it harder for us to achieve our goals and present threats to our innovation projects. And we can use a simple technique, just a simple kind of language, which says, let's talk about, first identify our strengths, and then talk about the implications that we have in terms of opportunities for the project. And we might say, well, because we have a particular strength, we're a market leader, we have great engineers, we have well-specified processes for change. Because of these strengths, what good thing might happen on the project that would help us to achieve our innovation objectives? And on the downside, we can say, because we have a very poor staff motivation, we have high rates of turnover, because we're not good at prioritizing our projects, what bad thing might happen on this innovation project that would stop us achieving our goals? So you can start with the things that you know. We know what our strengths and weaknesses are, and we can look at the implications for those things into our projects. And the good thing about analysis for innovation is that it addresses both opportunities and threats. So when we're in that innovation loop and trying to develop new ideas, we can look first for our strengths as an organization and build on those to create innovation opportunities. And when we're in that development loop, when something has gone wrong in innovation and we're reflecting and learning, we can think about our weaknesses and understand, where did this problem come from and where is this threat to our progress on our innovation, and then deal with it. So this one technique gives us both threats and opportunities, and is very useful in the innovation context. Another example technique would be benefits tree. A benefit tree is like a fault tree, and it starts on the right-hand side with identifying not a fault, but a benefit. And then you go to the left, you look to see what are the drivers of that benefit. Where did it come from? So if our benefit is to work faster or smarter or cheaper, how could we and the influences on creating that benefit? And then we go one further step to the left to say, well, what are the uncertainties that could affect those drivers of the benefit? And we're looking for opportunities to say, if this happened, it would help us to actually achieve that goal. This is a real example from a new product innovation where we were starting with an existing product and building on that to launch a related product into a new market. And clearly, one of the benefits is that we want to be able to work faster and cheaper. And if we're developing a product based on modifications to an existing product, ways to work faster and cheaper would be if we didn't have to change the product so much, if we could use the base product without change, or if we were able to increase our productivity. Those would drive a reduction in time and cost. What uncertainties can we think of that might help us, that would lead to fewer changes or increased productivity? And in this particular example, we found three opportunities, three uncertainties that might happen, that if they did happen, would lead us to have fewer changes to the base product, which would mean we could launch our new product faster and cheaper. So, for example, we might be able to use the existing products with very few or maybe no changes at all. We might find that the regulatory framework in our new product area was more friendly than we were expecting. And in terms of productivity, we might find that a very experienced staff are available. We can draw on a richer pool of people with good skills, work harder and faster, or maybe we can bring other people over from other internal projects to reinforce the team. By working from the benefit backward drivers and then through that to the uncertainties that would help, we can identify opportunities that will help with our innovation goals. So these two techniques, SWOT analysis and benefits trees, there are many other techniques, but they're quite simple to implement, and they can help us to find innovation opportunities. Once we've found some innovation opportunities, the next challenge is to filter them, to sort them, to decide which of our innovation opportunities are the most helpful. And so we can prioritize them in a standard way using the risk techniques, the standard risk management process, using something like a probability impact matrix. And here in this matrix we have two dimensions. We have the dimension of how likely the uncertainty to occur, we call that probability, and we have the dimension of how much it could affect our objectives, which we call impact. So we define our scales of high, medium and low around innovation, threat and opportunity. How do we use this for innovation opportunities? Well, we're probably used to using this kind of approach for bad things, for threats. But we could do exactly the same for opportunities with two grids. Grid, the one on the left here, has negative impacts, which we can use for prioritizing threats. The other grid on the right-hand side has positive impacts that we can use for prioritizing opportunities. So we might be talking about, for example, cost impact. On the left-hand side, when we're talking about threats, then if a bad thing happened, it might cost us more money, either a little bit or a medium amount or a lot. On the opportunity side, if we're talking about money, then if an opportunity happened, it could save us money, either a little bit or a medium amount or a lot. And so we can prioritize the impact scale for threats and opportunities. And you'll see that both of these grids look the same. They have a red zone where the really bad threats and the really good opportunities are. They have a yellow zone, which is our kind of medium priority area. And they have a green zone, which is the low priority threats and the low priority opportunities. And so we can use this grid on the opportunity side to prioritize our innovation opportunities that we've identified. There is a small refinement to this double matrix, which you'll see quite often in the risk management guidelines, which is to flip over or invert the opportunity side to bring the two red zones together into the middle. And you'll see that now on the impact scale, it goes low to high on the negative and then high to low on the positive side. And what that does is it brings the two red zones together into the middle and creates an area of focus, an area where we can pay particular attention to the worst threats in the red zone on the left-hand side and the best opportunities in the red zone on the right-hand side. And we've brought the two together to create a focus area, an attention area, where we need to start paying attention. On the opportunity side, if we try to prioritize our innovation opportunities, then we can look at that right-hand side in 4 zones. We could look at the top corner in the red area where we have things that are very likely to happen. They have a high probability, and they're very helpful. They have a high positive impact. Clearly, these are our quick wins. These are innovation opportunities which are easy to get because they have a high probability, and they create lots of benefit. So they should be our top priority. Secondly, we might consider looking at innovation opportunities which are in this zone here below the top zone. These are innovation opportunities that have a potential big benefit, but they're less easy to get. They have a lower probability of occurring. They're clearly worth exploring because of that potential big benefit, but they're harder to achieve because they have a lower probability. But because of the big benefit, we should prioritize those second. Thirdly, we've got the innovation opportunities in the top right-hand corner. They're easy to get hold of, but the benefits are small. We should look at these and consider if there are ways that we can increase the benefit. And then lastly, in the bottom corner, we have opportunities that are hard to get because the probability is low, and they don't really help us very much because the impact is low. So we needn't bother with these kinds of innovation opportunities. So you could see how you can use the standard probability impact matrix to prioritize our innovation opportunities and pick out the good ones. So once we've done that, the next question is, what should we do? We're now in the risk response planning phase of the risk process. And there are typically 4 risk response strategies that people think of. They think of risk avoidance, where we're removing uncertainty. They might think of risk transfer, where we're transferring the liability and the ownership to a third party. They might think of risk reduction, where we're making our risk smaller, accept it. And then there's a fourth strategy which people often forget about. If we can't avoid it or transfer it or reduce it, maybe we can't do anything. The fourth strategy that people should be thinking about is risk acceptance, taking the risk and controlling the residual risk that's left over. And these are the four strategies that most people think of when they're planning how to respond to risk. But these four strategies only work for bad things. You don't want to avoid or transfer or reduce an opportunity. You only want to do those things for threats. So what could we do for opportunities? Well, we could create similar strategies to manage opportunities which match the threat strategies. And we can do that by generalizing the threat strategies and then looking for the equivalent strategy for an opportunity. So, for example, if we want to try and remove uncertainty from a bad thing, we call that risk avoidance or threat avoidance, where we're trying to make it impossible for the bad thing to happen. What would the equivalent be for an opportunity if we want to remove the uncertainty? We can't make it impossible, but we could try and make it certain. We could try to develop a strategy to definitely exploit that uncertainty, to exploit the opportunity, remove the uncertainty and make it happen. So the match, the equivalent to avoiding a threat, is exploiting an opportunity. You make the threat impossible, you make the opportunity certain. In both cases, we're eliminating the uncertainty. And for the other strategies, we can do the same thing to make a matching strategy. For threat transfer, you involve somebody else to take the bad thing away. For opportunities, we could involve somebody else by sharing the opportunity so they help us to make it happen. For threats that we want to change the size of, we want to reduce them and make them smaller. But opportunities, we could change the size and make them bigger, make them more likely with bigger benefits. And for opportunities that we can't exploit or share or enhance, just like threats, we could just accept those opportunities, wait and see what happens, and be ready for them just in case. So we have a full range of opportunity management strategies available to us through the risk process, which we could use in our innovation projects. Some of our innovation opportunities we can just capture, we can exploit them straight away. Some of them we might need help to make them happen. We might need to share those opportunities. Some of the innovation opportunities we need to improve. We need to find ways of enhancing either the probability or the impact of it creating value. And some of them we can do very little about. It's good to be aware of them, but we should just monitor them. And so here we have a full range of innovation strategies which come out of the risk management process. There is actually another option that some people take when they're dealing with threats or with opportunities, which is just to bury their heads in sand and wait to see what's going to happen. And this is not a very good strategy. We don't recommend this one. In fact, it's probably true that ostriches don't do this. This is just a myth. It's just a story. And it's because the way the sand dunes are in the desert, it looks like they're hiding their heads. And ostriches don't really do this. But, you know, some people do it. Some people hide and pretend there's no uncertainty. Wrong. So, have we finished the risk management process and how we can apply it to our innovation opportunities? We've identified good innovation opportunities through SWOT analysis or benefit tree analysis or other risk identification techniques. We've prioritized our innovation opportunities using that probability impact matrix, and we've developed a strategy for addressing the innovation opportunity in the most appropriate way. Have we finished? In the risk process, there's a real danger of identifying, analyzing risks and not taking action. And that's illustrated by this simple riddle. The riddle goes like this. There are 5 frogs sitting on a log, and 4 decide to jump off. So, how many frogs are on the log? And the answer to the riddle, of course, is 5. There are still 5 frogs on the log because they just decided and they didn't do anything. There's a big difference. And in the risk process, the danger is that we make decisions about how we could manage our risk, but we don't actually do anything. We don't turn our decisions into actions. And we do need to take action. What we need to do is to jump, to get the frogs off the log, to take the action that we decided to do, and then see where we are. And it's really important in innovation, not just to analyze the opportunities and to prioritize them and to decide on innovation strategies. We actually have to do it. And the same is true for both risk and innovation. So let me wrap up here and maybe leave some time for questions or comments with a few final thoughts. Innovation projects clearly are risky. In innovation, we're trying to do things which are new or which are better in a way which is profitable to us and useful to our stakeholders. And projects, when we launch an innovation project, projects are constrained. Projects have requirements. Projects have objectives. Have constraints and assumptions. And we have to try and be innovative within the constraint of a project. And that creates risk. But what we have is a risk management process that enables us to look ahead and see what's coming, and we can use that process for two purposes, both to minimize threats and to maximize opportunities. We can prevent things going wrong on our innovation projects through the risk process, but we can also find potential solutions for our innovation also through the risk process. Risk management can help us to find innovation opportunities by using simple techniques to find the uncertainties that matter for innovation. Once we've found innovation opportunities, risk management can help us to pick the good opportunities by prioritizing against probability and impact using that simple probability impact matrix. And once we've found some good opportunities, we can use risk response strategies like exploiting and sharing and so on to make our innovation actually happen, and then take action to get the frogs off the log and create innovation value. So let me finish with this picture. I'm sure you're familiar with the story of the dinosaurs, and dinosaurs existed and ruled the world for a long time. And a lot of us in our organizations, we have big organizations which have been around for a long time, which are very strong. And when we're faced with the challenge of innovation, we're not quite sure what to do. The problem with dinosaurs is that they weren't very innovative. They weren't very flexible. They were masters of their environment, and then the environment changed. And the world was taken over by small, flexible, furry animals, the mammals. And mammals were the ones that were able to innovate and respond to the environment. And in fact, the dinosaurs died out. Well, most of them. The question for our organization is, are we a big, strong dinosaur which has existed for a long time, which understands a particular environment, but if the environment changes, we're in trouble? Or are we smaller, flexible, lighter on our feet, able to move quickly and to be innovative and respond to changes in our environment? Which one do you think is more likely to succeed in the world that you live in your projects? And which one do you think you want to be in your projects? Well, that's all I'd like to say at this stage. I hope you found that useful and interesting, taking a risk-based perspective into innovation, understanding that through both threats and opportunities, we can maximize our time in the innovation loop and minimize our time in the development loop and make innovation more successful, creating more value and more benefits for our organizations and our stakeholders. Risk management can really help us in all sorts of situations, and particularly in innovation projects. So that's the end of the formal part of the presentation. Mikhail, shall I turn back to you, and if you'd like to handle questions and comments, I'm happy to take those.
Yeah, thank you very much, David, for a great presentation. I really appreciate it. Dear colleagues, do you have any questions or comments for David? Please feel free to ask.
And if you have your microphone muted, please remember to take it off mute so that I can hear you.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. So maybe one question for me, David. You know, as head of project management office, I really know that to convince usual projects, you know, standardized projects to use some risk management, it's really hard. And I imagine that innovation projects, it's even harder to convince these innovative people to think about something, boring, like risk and everything. Yeah. How you handle with those innovative, creative guys?
Did you just say risk management is boring? Please. No.
So sorry, but it's how the most people see the risk management.
But they're wrong, because risk management is the most interesting part. When you don't have any uncertainty, you don't have any risk, everything is pre-planned, you know how every step will go. How boring is that? But the interesting part of a project is the risk, is the uncertainty, where we have the opportunity to do something different that has never been done before. And in my experience, it is the creative people, the innovative people, the marketing people, the designers who understand the world of uncertainty and who are trying to shape and channel that uncertainty to create something new. And all of the innovation and design expertise is about exploring that uncertainty and then scoping it and channeling it to create something at the end which is new and different and better. And so I think what we need to do is to suggest to our innovative colleagues that actually the risk management approach is a way of channeling and making that innovation process, that creative process, more efficient and more effective, because it very quickly helps us to understand which of that wide range of possible innovations is going to be most likely to create value. So the big problem with innovation, with creative types of people, is that their minds go like this. They think of a million things and they don't know which ones to pursue. With a risk-based approach, as we've described it in this presentation, you can use this approach to very quickly focus in on the innovation opportunities that are most likely to create the biggest value, and then use a strategic planning approach to decide how to exploit or capture them. So I would challenge anybody who says that risk management is boring, that it's restrictive, that it's holding you down. I would say instead it's encouraging us to think creatively, to think outside the box, and in fact to be more innovative.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I get it.
Let me talk to them. I'll persuade them.
Okay, great answer. So thank you, Dave. So other questions, colleagues?
I think I'm just persuaded here, so I'm quiet and persuaded into thinking this is really a really good approach.
Well, thinking, Christina, thank you. Thinking is a good response. You know, if you're given some new ideas that you haven't thought about before, you just need to reflect and say, I hadn't heard of that. What am I going to do about it? And it is that getting the frogs off the log, deciding which way to jump, and then deciding how you're going to implement some of these ideas in your real projects. But thinking is a very good response. Are there any other?
The log.
And then jump. Don't forget to jump. Are there any other comments or questions? I would just say at the website here, the Risk Doctor website, there is an Ask the Doctor page, and I'm very happy to answer questions or queries if you'd like to come and present those afterwards, or you can write to me by email. Also on the website there are other videos, other webinars, papers. Everything is free to download. So do feel free to come to the Risk Doctor website and just explore some of the other resources that we have there for you. Oh, and I should also say that on the briefings page of the website, we have just about 100 one-page briefings about risk management, which are available in multiple languages, including Russian. So they're all translated into English, French, German, Portuguese, Spanish, Arabic, and Russian. So if you'd like to read some of these ideas in Russian, that's available for you as well.
Okay. Thank you, David. Thank you very much for your presentation. And actually, personally, I really think those slides with frogs and dinosaurs are fascinating and very, motivating. That's great. That was great. So thank you, and thank you all my colleagues for participating today, and have a good day. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
So that was great, David, actually.
Stop recording.